once we also, the East London Late Start Orchestra, decided to have to set up CoMA, a summer school seemed to be the most appropriate way of gathering people nationwide. The team that came together to put that together, we worked on it for a year, a weekly meeting at Sarah Gould's house, and she acted as the administrator, minute taker and all the rest of it, and indeed was to some extent very involved in helping to make sure that that summer school ran properly on the day. And Simon was our conductor. I'd known him from his work with amateurs and young people, and he was really enthusiastic. So that was the team. We met weekly for 52 weeks before the launch.
And so the first few commissions were set up for the very first CoMA Summer School. There was one from myself, one from Michael Finnessy, one from Bill Sweeney, and I think there were the three that year. And I wrote a string piece, Bill wrote wind, and Michael wrote for the whole ensemble.
The ambition of CoMA, after it started, I mean, it was an ambitious thing to start anyway, a summer school out of the blue. We didn't know really how many people would be interested or if we'd get anybody. And that was really fantastic. It was like this explosion suddenly. Everyone came together at Workley Hall.
Wortley was incredible. Each room had been funded by a different trade union. That kind of, but the decor was something from what I would think of as a fairly rundown care home, with ridiculously large sofas everywhere and the most awful-looking carpets. The food was, at the most, let's say, basic. So it was food-wise a bit of a disaster. I mean, it was an incredible place.
And the building that we were in, Wortley Hall, that was I found quite bleak and severe, but useful for the purposes. But the main thing was it had this fantastic camaraderie about the whole setup, and it was wonderful, really.
And so the bar was still serving drinks in the morning when people came down for breakfast, but quite a lot of people went through the night, or haphazardly went through the night. They'd go to bed thinking I'm knackered, and at 11 o'clock in the evening maybe, and they'd be woken by the sounds of music and go down and inquire and stay until breakfast. It was, I just remember it's just like crazy, really.
Yeah, and we were exhausted. I mean, at the end of the week, I think everyone went home and sort of slept for a week, basically. But it was a real joy to come across a lot of other people who were interested in the same thing.
Well, it was quite challenging. It was quite hard, but I found that I could cope probably as well as quite a few people, enough people. And I don't know, everybody really kind of bonded. And it was like a sort of family there, really. And yeah, we just felt we were part of something special.
But I remember Judith Weir saying, this is going to go somewhere. This is special. So she kind of got a sense of a future beyond that summer school.
And it was all about just bringing composers and amateur musicians together. And that was really quite a radical idea at the time. And what was interesting for me being involved right at the beginning was not only how much the amateur musicians got excited by that, but how much the composers were excited and stretched and challenged by writing music for amateur performers.
Wortley was quirky, and it had these problems about food quality and so on and so forth. And Breton promised a much better canteen, much more responsive, but also it is actually majestic. And of course, it's set within the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, so this offered opportunities as well. So we had no hesitation in going to Breton Hall.
The ones at Breton Hall were particularly memorable. I really enjoyed it there. The space was great. The atmosphere was good. The accommodation wasn't up to date really much, but it was okay. But it just, the environment was so fantastic.
So they invited me to the CoMA Summer School, which at that point was at Bretton Hall. And with that came a commission to write a piece for CoMA. And I have to say, the hardest thing that any composer, I think, if they're honest, would say is writing for amateurs. It's dead easy to write for professionals because they can play virtually anything.
So he produced this piece for 1995, and it was a threnody in memory of the victims of the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and it's called Dark Sun. It lasts about 20 to 22 minutes. He conducted it. He was one of the tutors that year, and it was utterly moving.
It was just very meaningful to be involved. I was playing the radios. I was one of the radio operators. It was very meaningful to be involved in the first performance of a piece of work which had such contemporary and historic resonance. It really meant a lot at that moment. And I think people who were involved in that performance, that first performance of Dark Sun, won't ever forget it. I certainly won't.
Yeah, the sheer visceral power of that piece, you know, it's still a revelation of what's possible at the bigger scale for CoMA commissions and for that repertoire. And when the pieces are revisited, of course, that's again testament to Chris's vision and to the commissioning programme in general, and of course to what the composers have given us all.
And the first performance was at Bretton Hall, which was really exciting for me because I didn't know what I was unleashing there. It could have been a major disaster. And it went down very well, and we enjoyed playing it. And it was also a piece that I thought would only get one performance. And because of its semi-open nature, in that you can do it without French horns or it's pretty flexible. It's had something like 250 performances since then, which for a large orchestra piece is pretty good.
We had no hesitation in going to Bretton Hall, but eventually, for all sorts of reasons, Bretton was closed and not accessible anymore. And luckily, through Chris Adams, who had been on a course, I think, or even worked there before at Doncaster, there was a campus there at High Melton. But it was sufficiently different from Bretton for example, like Darren Morgan. He nicknamed it Doncatraz. Well, we weren't locked in, but it had a certain open prison feel about it, I guess.
But I loved doing the CoMA Summer Schools. The great thing is it's a fantastic concentrated period of time where both you as a tutor and the people who come on the course can absolutely focus on what's going on for several days, and that's fantastic. And having the concert at the end, so you're aiming towards a goal.
Well, for me, I think it's the freedom that you have, because the remit was vocal workshop, but because of my interests, I really made them into music theatre workshops and physical theatre, combining physical theatre with voice and different media, sometimes with amplification and electroacoustic elements. So any other organisation would have said, you have to, but no, CoMA, I could do what I liked.
Yeah, and there's no hierarchy. There wasn't the sort of teacher-pupil set up at all. That the people at CoMA, the people who come and joined the course, were absolutely on the same level, and we were on the same level as them. We were all in it together, really, and there was no sort of deference, really. We were all together. people who hadn't been playing that long but wanted to take part, and us, and it was wonderful.
Going to CoMA Summer School has been, a real experience. The sort of level, you get full up by the end of the week, and you get to the stage where you can't take any more, but it's at doing so much and just being absolutely focused on it is something that's really great.
Once we got going on this, we wanted to make this a significant historical legacy of a particular period in contemporary music, and that this music was representative of the wide spectrum of contemporary music that was going on at the time. And I think we've broadly achieved that. Yeah, so it's that's a proud achievement, obviously, for CoMA, that it's done that.
You had wonderful people like Michael Finnessy and Steve Montague and Diana Barrell becoming involved early on, all, well-respected international composers. And so that was a great thing that Chris Surety did, was to get these people at the beginning to write.
For example, there was this wonderful open score project where Chris got a composer to just oversee the whole activities for a year, and there was a commission at the end of it, too, as far as I can remember. And I think I did that the 10th anniversary, and I wrote a big piece, huge orchestral piece called The Four Temperaments, which was done in Bath, the Bath Festival. And percussion instruments, as we were unloading and going into the rehearsal room, kept coming in. And I thought, gosh, everything but the kitchen sink. And then a kitchen sink came in, literally a proper kitchen sink, to the glee of the player. He said, look what I've found for you.
The Tate had a collection of 20th century, a little pack of postcards, 20th century British art. And he asked me to commission 6 composers, one of which was myself, to choose a postcard and write a piece inspired by the artwork. And so I chose this Edoardo Paolozzi sculpture called Mechanic, which is this big steel bench with a kind of what looks like an engine of a lorry, built into it. It's all one huge object. So yeah, it was great because I got first choice. I chose that before I sent for anybody else was commissioned, and then those 6 pieces were played over a weekend in the Tate in Liverpool.
But the other thing was to make links with local people, to the education services, with other orchestras, amateur orchestras, but also professionals who might be interested, local composers, and so on. So this was a way of gathering together people throughout the UK who had some common interest. And having the ensembles has been a success in that respect.
They've all developed their own sort of personality, their own focus. For example, some ensembles are really interested in improvisatory practice. Some ensembles are more interested in earlier Western notated music. Some ensembles have members who are really passionate about writing music themselves for their fellow ensemble members.
You're writing not just for your ensemble, but hopefully for any CoMA ensemble. And again, the CoMA ensembles around the country range from 2 players to 30. There's a huge number of variants in the number of players in each group.
I was singing in a street choir, and a friend who was involved in the choir was involved in CoMA and had told me that doing a performance of Cornelius Cardew's Great Learning. And I sort of jumped at the chance in getting involved in that, and I came along and performed with CoMA London and other things, and immediately said, I'm going to join CoMA London. This is exactly what I've been looking for.
The best way to really get into new music is to play it, sit down and play it, which you can do with CoMA. It's just there, and anybody can come along and take part. And what's there not to like about that? It's completely inclusive, and there's a huge range of repertoire, and it's an opportunity for composers to write, and there's all this material for people to perform.
Now all kinds of music, the climate is that all kinds of music goes, and the people are writing very tonal stuff and very complex stuff, mixed media things. And I think CoMA was one of the first, if not the very first, to do that. It really encompassed an awful lot of different styles very early on. And I think in that sense, CoMA was way ahead.
They were having a chat about something about art or music or whatever it was, and I said to Chris, you know, the interesting thing about CoMA is it's not part of a movement, it is an art movement itself, which I think is not totally true, but it's fairly self-contained in some ways and has a real energy to it that I think would be looked back on as something that's was important to quite a few people, and things came out of it.
Well, CoMA is a rare and unique organisation. Many organisations claim that about themselves, but I think CoMA genuinely can say it is, and wants to welcome people in who want to be part of new music, about playing commissions for the first time, about exploring what's going on around them today and living new music culture, and celebrating that passion, that interest, and then building partnerships with professional organisations, which just raises the public participation to a new level. And that's where some real magic can happen.
A key part of CoMA's vision is the sharing of this practice, that it's not something that's been, CoMA sets up a way of doing things, a way of creating repertoire, a way of working with people, a way of working across the whole sector, and it's ours. The whole point has always been about how this is shared with as many people as possible. And so it's simultaneously, in that sense, unique and embedded, I hope, in a whole sense of change about what's possible in new music at the moment.
It's there for young composers, for mid-career, for established composers. It's there for professional musicians. It's there for community music makers. It's there for people who just want to have a place to experiment. CoMA is this sort of hotbed of people and opportunities and projects and experimentation and celebration and freedom. And I think that's the thing that drew me to it most, was this just sense of possibility and of people who are willing to try anything.
But we were always looking towards those moments where the musicians from CoMA could be on an equal platform with our players in either specially commissioned or specially chosen repertoire that was almost designed to give all those different ability musicians, from our expert virtuosi musicians on stage with us, through to the amateur players of different abilities, give them an equal playing field and allow that collective ambition to be part of contemporary classical music.
I think it's very important, and clearly, the arts agenda is about inclusion and making the arts available to as many people as possible, and that means actually participating and performing as well as just going and listening or looking at things. And I think CoMA has a particular role as a sort of a really key node in a network connecting amateur ensembles with professionals.
Whether you make your living from it, or whether you are just someone who loves performing music, whatever, hugely varying levels of skill. Some really very accomplished players, some people who are very much at the beginning of a journey, but somehow it's sort of restoring this idea of music as a social thing that exists in a context of people being together. And that's something that CoMA does really powerfully.
I'm really, really excited to get deep into the legacy and look at all of the wonderful things we've achieved, see how we can carry them forward, but also see how we can give everything a new shine, a new lift. So really, really looking at what it means to be a musician in all senses of the word in the 21st century, and making sure that we are reflecting that in every way possible. We're really, really excited about thinking deeper about what it means to have the word all in our title and make sure that everything we are doing at CoMA is truly available for all. And we're also really excited to just get deeper into the creativity of what we're doing. Every single CoMA project is about bringing out someone's inner creativity.
and the ability to say to people, there are places where this can go. You know, whatever your experience, whatever your enthusiasm, that principle of being able to be involved, it can be embedded in grassroots communities, just as it is in concert halls and all the places where the professional partners we work with are situated. It's never been more important.